What's going on, Mr. Seth Rogers? Good to see you. Like number 369. I appreciate that very much. Thinking about you, praying for you, always will. I hope you're doing all right. Robin 407 says Mark Redwine. Exactly. I'd like to remind each and every one of you of that. Mark Redwine was responsible for taking his 13-year-old son, Dylan Redwine's life.
What happened to Dylan?
With the recovery of his body, that makes it, from our perspective, a homicide.
Investigators believe Dylan Redwine was possibly kidnapped and killed. We asked Mark Redwine how he felt about Dylan's death now becoming a homicide investigation. Mark Redwine said this.
They can have a homicide all they want to, but if they feel like I've had any involvement with it, then why am I standing on my front porch having this conversation with you?
Is there any reason to believe that Mark Redwine could be a suspect in this case?
We haven't identified anyone as a suspect at this point.
What's going on, Mr. Seth Rogers? Dylan's mom had to suffer, I want to say it was 5 agonizing years.
Percent of his remains. That means 98% of them is still scattered out there in them trees somewhere.
Mark Redwine and his estranged wife, Elaine Redwine, were called into sheriff's headquarters earlier today.
They found, I think they said 2 femurs, a shoulder blade bone or something to do with the shoulder.
Thinking about you, praying for you, always will.
Dylan Redwine disappeared in November of 2012. His remains were found much later in a wooded area not far from his father's home. 4 years later, in 2017, Mark Redwine was charged with his murder.
With no arrest, and the entire time, they was watching Mark. And ultimately, they ended up finding Dylan's little body, and his father was arrested and charged for the crimes. And that was one of the cases where they didn't think that law enforcement was doing anything because
They were stone cold quiet.
a hiker found Dylan's skull. It was heartbreaking. Ugh. What's going on, Mr. Seth Rogers? Good to see you. Thinking about you, praying for you, always will.